Welcome to 5 Dubs by MDDC Press. I'm your host, Rebecca Snyder, the Executive Director of the Maryland, Delaware, and DC Press Association, which represents news media in our region. 5 Dubs focuses on the who, what, when, where, and why of local news media. We'll talk with the journalists about the stories behind the news. You can find more information about our guests in the show notes or on our website, www.5-dubs.com. Welcome. I am delighted to have with me today Mike McClure, who is the publisher of Morning Star Publications, which is a collection, a triad actually, of publications based in Delaware. So welcome to the program, Mike.
Thanks, Rebecca. I appreciate it.
Glad to have you here. So tell us a little bit about Morning Star, which first I want to ask about the name. That's such an interesting sort of what brought you to that, because within that umbrella, you've got the Seaford Star, the Laurel Star, and the Business Report. So how does Morning Star kind of fit into that celestial aspect?
Well, it was started by Brian and Carol Richardson. We're celebrating our 28th year of actually Seaford Star started 28 years ago in April. Laurel Star will be in August, and the Business Report was towards the end of the year, 28 years ago. They owned the publication for up until I'm going on the third year that I've owned the publication, but I've also worked there for 22 years.
Oh my gosh, that is a long career. Have you worked other places besides Morning Star Publications?
I worked for several newspapers for about 3 years before I started the Star, and actually started in the radio business. I did play-by-play announcing for some radio stations and for a minor league baseball team for a year.
Oh, and actually, don't I remember that you collect baseball cards? You're a collector of something, but
Yeah, I do collect baseball cards.
Okay, so now did the baseball cards come before the play-by-play, or have you just always loved baseball?
Oh, I've loved baseball since I was probably 5 or 6 years old. My dad actually had a sporting goods store in Pennsylvania, so that got my interest into baseball cards and sports.
Sure. So then you have worked at Morning Star for the bulk of your career. Have you ever thought of putting a sports element in there? I know you cover a lot of, and I think this is one of the really interesting parts of Seaford Star and Laurel Star. You go deep into high school sports and into sort of the community aspect of those towns. Can you talk to me a little bit more about what you cover and how you approach it?
Sure. Sports is what got me into the newspaper business. Like I said, I was doing play-by-play and ended up getting doing some stringer sports coverage for a newspaper in Georgetown that used to exist.
Mm-hmm.
And it eventually developed into a full-time position, but I've always, even now as a publisher, I still go out and cover games. And
you physically go out and you're the stringer on those games.
Yeah, I still go out and cover games every week. We have some other stringer writers and I have a full-time writer that covers sports, but sports is a big part of our community, especially in Western Sussex. The people, parents or just community members are huge supporters of the local high school sports teams. So during the high school season, we run 7 or 8 pages a week in both papers of high school sports coverage. I mean, that's local news is important as well as local sports. Anything local is the focus of our paper.
So tell me a little bit about your community, and I guess maybe it's time just for people who may not be familiar with your stable of publications. Let's break it down a little bit and talk about the Seaford Star and the Laurel Star, how they're different and the same in the communities among them, and then we'll get to the Business Report.
Okay. Well, the Seaford and Laurel Star have a lot of the same pages in them. All ads run in one, they run in both of them. But we have about 9 or 10 pages that are different, that, our front page, some of our news coverage, some of our sports coverage. Seaford Star covers from Greenwood down to Blade. So the towns of Greenwood, Bridgeville, Seaford, and Blades, as
Okay.
well as a little bit of Maryland and Central Sussex.
Mhm.
And the Laurel Star covers Laurel, Bethel, and Delmar, Maryland and Delaware, as well as some other Maryland and and Central Sussex.
So just to kind of fix it all in our minds, that's more South Central Delaware. Am I getting that right, or
We're
West?
basically the Route 13 corridor in Sussex County. From
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
Greenwood is a very northern part of western Sussex, and Delmar, Delaware is the most southern part of western Sussex.
And so those communities, correct me, because that's not an area I'm overly familiar with. So, but it feels more that that's a more rural, kind of very small town, very, like people have grown up there and stayed there. Am I off base
Definitely.
or?
No, definitely. Yeah, it's a lot more hometown. And not that the beach areas aren't, but I mean we don't have the influx of people coming in, visitors coming to our part of the county.
Mhm. So now what about, do you have a fair number of immigrants? Because I would imagine that's also a large farming community, because it's nice and flat and good.
Yeah.
And so are the demographics changing at all in your area?
Um, to some degree. I mean, I think one of the struggles that some of the school districts in our area are dealing with in the communities is trying to keep kids who grow up here, have them after they go to college or whatever, have them come back to the area. And
Sure.
I think that might be one of the struggles. There are some new, demographics in this area, especially when you out at the high school level when you go to sports games. But
Mhm.
we also have generations. I mean, I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to cover kids of kids that I covered.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
And their parent or I'm dealing with coaches who I covered when they played high school or little league.
Oh, that's so funny. You can remember when and have the clips to back it up.
Yep.
So what kind of industries, before we get to the business report, which is really about, the kind of businesses in that area and sort of what you're doing in that area, I just wanted to understand kind of your coverage strategy for the Seaford and Laurel Star. I know high school sports is a big piece of that, and you also mentioned local news. Are you covering the town meetings for all of that's a laundry list of towns that you cover? How do you juggle um, covering all of those areas, because they all have their own town meetings, their
Yeah.
own structures? How do you manage to do that?
Yeah, we cover, I think, pretty much every town in our area. We cover the town council meetings as well as the school board meetings. Um, we have myself and one other reporter, Hunter Noose is my full-time reporter. I hired him back in last September.
Hmm.
Uh, but otherwise, we rely a lot on stringers. We have 8 freelance writers that all cover various things. So
Mm,
that's how we're able to get to the meetings, because it's not just one or two of us trying to get somewhere. We've got several people that have their regular assignments.
sure. And now does Delaware require, and these are really small towns that we're talking about, is there a requirement to stream those meetings, or is it all in-person shoe leather reporting? Which is always ideal, but sometimes hard to
I
get to.
don't I don't think there's a I don't think there's a requirement. Some of the towns do. Some of the towns and school boards will record it and post it later that you can watch, which is convenient. I mean, that's a lot of that started with COVID, and
Mhm.
it's convenient. I mean, you're right. It's more ideal to be there, especially if there's something to take a picture of. But it has been convenient for us, yeah, when we're not able to get somewhere that we can still, like some of the school board meetings I can't get to live, but I can watch them later and still be able to report on them. And if I need a picture, I can ask the district to send something to me.
Sure, that makes sense. And then are there any hot button issues that you feel like have been bubbling up in the past, summertime's a little different, but anything that you're looking forward to in the fall that you think are going to be big issues for your area?
Well, I think all of Delaware and especially Kent and Sussex have been dealing with the schools needing to go to referendum or needing either to build new schools or build
Hmm.
new additions, because just the population boom. There's just so many kids out there, and in
Hmm.
Western Sussex, we've got a couple districts that are probably going to be going to referendum on to either to build a new school or renovate or just to get capital money to run the schools. So that's probably something in the fall that and beyond that we're going to be covering is just the need for the schools to expand or to address the population.
Sure. And it all comes down to money at that point because
Yeah.
you know you get into interesting zoning issues, but then you get the capital expenditures, and then of course you need teachers to in those schools. And so that kind of leads us to the business report. Tell me about that publication because I think that's relatively new, like maybe in the past couple of years.
Well, the original business report started the same year as our other publications, but it used to be a newsprint.
Okay.
Probably about 10 years ago, we switched to a glossy magazine,
Hmm.
and we used to just cover Kent and Sussex County. And then we also had a publication in Salisbury for a while, and we kind of joined those two together. So now the business report also goes into Wycomico County. So we cover Kent and Sussex in Delaware and Wycomico in Maryland.
That's a pretty big spread. So are there other magazines or any other news, sort of business news outlets there? I know you've got the Delaware Business Times, but that's more Newcastle.
Yeah, that's more upstate. There's other kind of niche magazines in like in the Salisbury area, but none that are devoted to covering business like we are.
Mhm. So tell me the strategy behind that and sort of what you hope to achieve with the business magazine.
Well, we have we have monthly themes.
Mhm.
Each month we do like agriculture, education, different types of themes. And then each month we sell the cover. A business can buy the cover, they get a picture on the cover, they get a story on the center spread, and then they get an ad for in a future publication.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, so that's I mean that's a huge driver for us. If we don't sell the cover, then we're kind of struggling that month. But I mean, we've been pretty successful the last few years in selling it.
Hmm. So when you look at kind of business in that area, because that's a wide swath of coverage, what do you see as the industry drivers in those areas?
Well, agriculture is the big driver in Sussex County, which, like I said, we have a ag weekly or monthly ag theme. We also have a healthcare. In October, we do healthcare, and that's a big driver because we've got so many hospitals between Kent and Sussex, Wycomico, and
Hmm.
Newcastle. I mean, so healthcare and ag probably are the two biggest industries in this area.
So in terms of agriculture, what kind of agriculture is really booming there? Do you have the larger sort of, is it more industrial farms or they tend to be smaller farms, and what do they grow?
Um, I think there's a lot of smaller farms. I mean, chicken is probably the biggest industry of agriculture. A lot of chicken
Mhm.
farms.
How does that smell over in there? I mean, because I feel like there's so many there's such a regulation around chickens right now and chicken farming and kind of pushback. I mean, are do you find that the farms are what are they doing in the face of things like that?
Well, I mean, we have one or two schools that are kind of out in the areas, but I mean, I live in town, so I don't notice that too much.
So it really is just super rural then on that.
Yeah.
All right, shwoo. Well, that was always good. So you've been in the news industry for a really long time, and I know focused on sports, but it's not an easy industry sometimes to come into, nor to stay in. And now you made the decision to purchase Morningstar several years. Was that right before the pandemic or during the pandemic? I can't recall.
I think it was right towards the tail end of it. I'm
Okay,
going
so
into my third, this is going into my third year as on.
okay, so that would have been 2021,
Yeah.
22, somewhere around there. So what prompted you to make that investment? Because it is an investment, and it's a huge responsibility for what you carry. What drew you to the change?
Well, it was kind of something that I was discussing over the years with Brian and Carol, but it wasn't anything that we talked about until Carol was working in the office. She was our bookkeeper and payroll person, and she got to the point where she wanted to retire, and Brian's a state senator, so when he became elected, uh, about 8 years before I bought the paper, when he became elected, I took over as the running the day-to-day operations because he was up in Dover, 6 months
Sure.
out of the year. So it was something that we talked about. I mean, I love my job. I like the newspaper. I feel like we're a valuable resource for our community. So I didn't want to see it go because I've seen other papers when they get eaten up by a larger corporation, then they go away.
Right. Yeah. And this gives you the control to really focus on the communities that you have focused on and to keep the editorial coverage the way you'd like it to be.
Yeah, we really haven't changed a lot of what we've always been doing. I mean, I've been with the company 22 out of 28 years. So I mean, I've learned from we keep the things that have been working, and the things that didn't work, we try to fix. And we've tried some new things, some new publications, and some have worked and some haven't. But it definitely is it's a good thing to have that experience. I'm not coming in from another area. I mean, I know the area and I know the newspaper and I know the employees.
Right. No, that makes a huge difference. So what lies ahead for Morningstar and its associated publications? Do you have you can kind of continue to be the anchor of your community, or do you feel like you're going to branch out and maybe try a different publication, or what's ahead for you all?
Well, I mean, I think for publications, right now we're just trying to, just sticking with what we have,
Hmm.
trying to improve upon it. But we do a lot of like magazines and special sections that we run inside the paper.
Hmm.
We just added one which kind of expanded our coverage area to Georgetown and Millsboro because those areas really don't have a regular newspaper. So
Hmm.
we're doing a monthly publication focused on those areas, and then if it grows, maybe that will turn into a regular publication. But this way we don't have the added expense of starting a brand new publication,
Right.
but we can still reach those areas and see if it works out.
So do you do that as sort of like a little special section within the publication, or is it a standalone?
No, it's in our publication. It's an insert in our publication once the first week of each month, and then we take some extra copies that week out to Millsboro. Actually, I take some extra copies. I deliver them to the libraries and the town halls in different areas in Georgetown and Millsboro.
Now, are those free publications or are they paid?
Normally we're a paid publication.
Hmm.
We're 75 cents at newsstands, and it's only $25 a year to get it
That is a
subscription.
steal, Mike. My goodness, I feel like that's one of the most competitive circulation rates I've heard in a long time.
It's
I'm impressed.
$25 a year, gets mailed in through the post office. We also just started, because it was last year, we started having an e-newspaper, so you could do a subscription that way. So
Mhm.
that the e-subscription is also $25, or you can get the combo print and e-newspaper for $40.
That sounds like a great deal. My goodness. Have you seen a lot of people taking you up on the e-edition, or do you feel like your print is still pretty primary?
The print's primary. We have a lot of older readers. I mean, we've had some take us up on the e-newspaper, and we're hoping to be able to grow that in the future. But
Mhm.
it's still probably 90% of our circulation, or 90% of our subscribers are print.
Sure. Well, and in the Press Association, as you know, does a readership survey every year that we allow our members to white label and put out. And one of the questions we always ask is, if you have a choice, would you prefer to read your news in print or online? And surprisingly, if there's a preference, people prefer the print. They may not prefer, it's often a higher price, they also want the breaking news. They want all the bells and whistles of what the internet can provide and socials can provide, but really they do like print
Yeah.
if they can manage it, which I always think is really interesting.
Well, one of the reasons that we added the e-newspaper was we were having an issue because we do have some people that live out of state that get our paper, and they were having problems getting it in a timely manner. It gets caught up in the mail sometimes, and sometimes they'll get it within a week, sometimes it'll be like a month. So
Oh,
we
that's
had a
hard.
few people kind of cancels the subscription because they couldn't get it out of state. So, we added the newspaper so those who had computers and were comfortable doing it could subscribe that way.
No, and that makes perfect sense. You have to meet your readers where they are, for sure. So, what else would you like people to know about your publications?
Um, well, one thing I just recently started this summer was I've seen I get a lot of the newspapers to either online or mailed to me or whatever, but I also get emails of newsletters from different, some of the daily papers, some of the other online organizations. And I've
Hmm.
been seeing that a lot of papers do newsletters, but
Yeah.
it's usually just like click on it and go to a link. So I decided to do it a different way, and I laid it out like a regular newspaper. It's about 5 pages, just kind of recaps what's in that week's paper, how to get us, how to subscribe or how to get to our e-newspaper or Facebook or online. It also looks at some things coming up, upcoming events, and we also do kind of like a look back, like an old article that might be
That's a
relevant
great
to today.
idea.
So, I mean, it takes me probably 2 or 3 hours to put it together and mail it out. We only have about, I think we're up to like 150 or so. I just mail it out to local politicians and
Hmm.
business people who I think might be interested in it. We haven't even put anything out in the paper about it yet to get people to subscribe to it. But
Hmm.
we've just kind of been slowly building in just another way to promote our newspaper and our publications.
Absolutely. Well, and I do feel like those sort of marketing your, I find that many of our members are great marketers on behalf of their advertisers and their clients. And sometimes they don't always put that lens on themselves to really think about, okay, how can we get out there? What are interesting ways we can do it? So really, I love the idea of sort of the foreshadowing newsletter and just building your list for sure.
Yeah, I mean, because we're a paid publication, we don't put a lot of our articles like out on our website and stuff because we want people to subscribe. But we just with the newsletter, I just kind of put one story, partial story out there to tease it and some pictures and it's just a way to promote our paper. And I also put instead of putting ads on the pages, I put house ads on to promote our upcoming
Mhm.
products. So it's another way to promote ourselves through those
Yeah.
ads.
And let people know what's coming. Well, it sounds like there's been a ton of stuff that you've been doing, and you're still continuing to grow and serve your communities. And I was really glad to talk to you about how it all works and how it all comes together. So thank you for spending some time with me.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Rebecca.
Sure thing. Thanks for listening to 5 Dubs with Rebecca Snyder. Please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review wherever you download your podcasts so that others can find us. What do you want to know about local journalism? Email me at rsnyder, SNYDER, at mddcpress.com. Interested in supporting our podcast and journalism? Please donate to our 501c3 Press Foundation. Find out more and see the full episode list and show notes at www.5-dubs.com.